Welcome to Project Insight's Professional Development Series. Today's session, Shaping Your Company's Future with Portfolio Management, focuses on one of the most powerful ways to align execution with vision. Innovation alone isn't enough. Without effective portfolio management, even great ideas can fail to make an impact. This session will show you how to use portfolio management to balance innovation, product development, and maintenance work so your organization can stay competitive, focused, and future ready. We'll explore how to define what belongs in your portfolio, assess where your resources are going, and determine how to balance strategic initiatives against day-to-day support. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone will be on mute. Feel free to use the chat as we go throughout this session. This is valid for one PDU. The certificates will be mailed to you by the end of the week. The trick is you must attend the end of the session for that. And then this recording will be accessible via the same link you joined on today. We are joined by Steve West, founder and CEO of Project Insight, and Diane Buckley-Alwies, CEO of Core Performance Concepts. Together, they'll show practical methods to connect your project work to your company's long-term goals. You guys ready to get going?
I think so. I'm actually
Wonderful.
really excited about this topic. So how's everybody doing today?
Great.
Okay. All right. So what we want to talk about today is, the power of portfolio management as it relates to helping our companies thrive. And, as Matt said, even the best ideas can fail. But what we need to be thinking about, and this doesn't apply to just technology businesses. This applies to operational businesses. Innovation can be a lot of different things. We tend to kind of fall back into the whole technology conversation, but all of these concepts do apply in just business operations improvements. We all understand that today things are moving so fast and that innovation is critical. And if we don't have innovation in our organizations, we're kind of standing still, if not moving backwards. And so every company should be thinking about ways to innovate, ways to change what they're doing today to be more efficient, more effective, offer new products, a lot of different ways to move your company forward. And if we move too slowly, or if we move too fast, we could stumble. And there's certain companies that can afford to do that. And you probably know who they are, those big ones with the large R&D, buckets of money that, they can probably, do more innovation, not be afraid to fail. But most companies, have to really be thoughtful and deliberate with regard to where they're going and have a higher probability of success versus just try things and potentially fail. And then if we move too slowly, we're going to be left behind. And a lot of companies out there say, "Oh, well, I don't have competitors today." Well,
you will.
Yeah, but you will. I mean, just think about how fast things are changing and how AI is really disrupting a lot of stuff out there. So if you don't think you have competition, and if you end up moving too slowly, there is a high probability that somebody's going to leapfrog over you. So what we're going to talk about today is the use of a portfolio beyond just day-to-day stuff. Really thinking about the whole organization, how the whole organization can benefit by managing what you're doing in a portfolio type setting. Just a little bit of, education, right? We all should know, but if it's just in case there's a new person on here that's never been exposed to portfolio of projects, think about it like a portfolio of stocks. It's a mix of large things, small things, new things, old things. Within the project realm, there's programs that are a collection of multiple projects. There's projects that are out there that are have to be prioritized, and all that rolls up into a portfolio. And if you think about a stock portfolio, there's a financial return at the end that you hope that if your stocks grow, you're going to see, 20%, 30%, growth. Same thing holds true with a portfolio of projects. Each of those projects, and we've pounded on this over the years, each of those projects have to have a purpose. There has to be some sort of return. It doesn't have to be a financial return, but there has to be some sort of return. Otherwise, why are you doing it? and each of those projects and programs have an expected time for when you're going to see the benefits. So over time, you should have a plan with regard to how your projects and programs deliver on those expectations. And that same thing as a financial portfolio. It's a portfolio of your projects within the whole organization. So there's your educational moment. Now we're going to talk about reality, right? But one of the things I've seen over the years, and especially with innovative activities happening, is that companies get so consumed with managing their support that they lose track or slow down or don't deliver in a timely manner the things that they are wanting to do. And if you really want to see your organization succeed, we need to balance that. And the question really comes is, how much time should we be spending on maintenance and support? How much time should we be, managing our product development efforts, the new enhancements and features and processes or products that we want to deliver to the marketplace? And then what are we doing for innovation, and how important is it to our organization that we manage that and have some sort of plan to it? So we're going to kind of hit all three of these topics. If you've been following my blog post, some of this will be a repeat, but this session is more about bringing it all together so you can kind of get a good sense of how you can effectively manage your organization's portfolio. And so where we're going to start is, how much are you spending on it? Do you know? I mean, I guarantee you that your support costs are not just the support team. You're going to have project managers involved with that. You're going to have operators involved with that. You're going to have analysts involved with technology teams involved with that. Your sales team might even be involved with that. Your customer success team. There's a lot of people in your organization that work on support and maintenance items. So it really is important to get a sense of how much time are we really spending on that? And then how much time are we spending the things that we plan to spend on? That's that product development, the things that we planned this year to accomplish. We wanted to implement a new product. We wanted to, get a new client up and running. We wanted to, get new technology out there that helps our clients be more efficient or ourselves be more efficient. There's a roadmap that's probably been developed, and I question whether or not the roadmap includes everything you need. So that's one lesson that we're going to be talking about throughout today. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. I want Matt to show you a little bit about the capabilities that Project Insight has, but it could be as simple as 1 week out of every quarter, every 2 months. You just basically ask everybody to kind of put a percentage down. In this past week, what percentage of your time did you spent on support? What percentage of your time do you think you spent on things that you plan to do? And what percentage of your time did you spend on thinking it outside and on things that are going to be new for the organization, on doing that forward-thinking planning? Most people can look back a week and kind of come up with something, but you need that baseline. We're all about metrics. We're all about putting a baseline together. I can't say whether or not we're improving unless I have something to measure against. So you can do it a little bit more granular, or you can do it very, very high level, like I just said. So, Pat, or Steve, if you were.
Well, and then the people that do actually do time tracking, you should have the data already.
Right.
Exactly.
No, 100%. I mean, to Diane's point, one of the nice things about within Project Insight, and we have the ability to capture portfolio programs and then the project work itself, which makes it really easy to take away that anecdotalness of what you're doing, right? It's not this idea of, Steve, what did you work on? Or sometimes it's even the idea of, Steve, what do you think I want to know you worked on during that time, right? When you're actually using a platform like Project Insight, you can see what that looks like as a whole. So, here we have a portfolio view of the work that we're doing as a whole. This is where we can see the different programs like Diane's talking about. So I've got my innovation work, I've got my maintenance and support, and I've got my roadmap. And thinking back to the circles, this is that big circle. These interior ones are those programs. And then down below are those pieces that make up each of those. And these are the projects that are within each of these. The nice part here is it's all visual, it's all easy for anybody to understand. I don't need to communicate to Steve where we're at with any of these because he can understand what is in the innovation, what are the names, where are we at. If he wants to leave a comment, he can come in here right away and just leave a comment, and that can ping me automatically as the PM to say, hey, Steve left you a comment, make sure that you get on that kind of piece right away. You can visualize that over time if you want within our tool. So that way, again, I don't need to have somebody double back to say, what did you work on last week, right? I can effectively understand what tasks, what projects, what we are doing as an organization during that timetable. And that cascades even into the idea of being able to look at the task lists that make up each of those projects within those programs. So in this way, over time, I can understand what's being worked on, what timeline it's done, is it complete, is it red and overdue, do we have problems right away? And then to remove that kind of anecdotalness is we offer what we call the work list, which is just the simple place where I, as the individual contributor, can come in and say, hey, I did this. I started this. I completed this. I logged time on it, like Steve was mentioning, where I don't have to, have guesswork about what it is. I can definitively say, this day I did this. I spent 4 hours on it, and then we can move on to the next piece that's cascading from my tasks or my other projects that we're doing here. So.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you're not using a tool like Project Insight, then likely you're going to be doing those calculations yourself in a spreadsheet to show this is what our programs and portfolios are, and being able to automate that will help save time.
Yeah, and for those of you that are using Project Insight, you should have that data readily available. And then it's a matter of, questioning or asking the question whether or not do I have everything I need to in the
Yeah.
tool to be able to reflect a full portfolio for my organization.
Yeah, I mean,
So
and
that's
if
step
you,
one.
yeah, those who, again, like for the Project Insight users in the audience, if you're not using the feature, you can just turn that on and start organizing your projects, and then those calculations and visualizations will just be there for you. So that gets you jump started on doing the program and portfolio management, but there's a lot more to it than just the tool, and this is where we're going with this webinar.
Yeah. So as I was getting ready for this webinar, one of the things I was like doing some research on is, how much time are organizations spending on support, right? Like, and how much time should they be?
Globally, right?
Yeah. And support could be things, answering client questions, fixing bugs, refining, process flows. I mean, there's a lot of things support can be, just answering questions for your clients, or, asking questions internally so you can get those answers for your clients. People don't realize how much time is taken up with support. And if you're not managing support well, you're going to see some symptoms of that. You're going to have clients that are going to be frustrated because they're not getting answers that they need, or things fixed. They're not seeing the performance. You're going to see team burnout because, I don't know about you, but when things are going south, or I'm dealing with a lot of support issues, it's not fun. And it could also be, support could also be just infrastructure stuff that has to be done, right, Steve? I mean, clients don't even see it, but if the performance of the tools are coming down all the time, that's going to be frustrating. And then thirdly, it all comes down to sales and organizational growth. And if sales teams are out there trying to sell new business, and there's a lot of external support issues going out there, they're going to hear it. Word on the street that XYZ company, they're not necessarily really good, good support people. So once you go work with them, you're going to have trouble. I mean, that stuff gets around. So too much support work affects how your organization is going to grow. So I was just really curious, like how much should we be using and how much do people spend on support? But I'm going to keep you in suspense for a tiny bit longer on that. And then, whoopsie, went a little far. And then, I always love to bring my little urgent and important slide in here. So if I'm running support, we know that we want to work on important and not urgent items, right? These are things that, in theory, we know that they're important to the organization. They should be tied to how your product or your operations run. It shouldn't be, different than what your organization's vision and mission are. So we should be, fixing things. We should be addressing things. We should have answers for the things that are in our product today and in our product, plan for our product in the future. But there are going to be things that are important and urgent. These are the, oh my God, we have a crisis, right? And you're just going to have to do that if the impact on the client, if there's an impact on the client. I see a lot of times everything's urgent because one thing broke. And it's one of those things where you have to always ask, it's like, okay, well, how often does this happen? And is it something that we have a way to work around it today? Have the conversations like, is it something that is ultimately going to be part of our organizational path? Is it something that, is just a one-off? The person on the other end of the phone is probably panicking anyway, and you're trying to respond to that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everything they call you on needs to be addressed. And that's the hard part of support. Finding out what's not important, even though the client's sitting there saying it's urgent. Those are the things we should be monitoring. We should be looking at ways to fix it, but not necessarily derail our product development items or our innovation. But those are things you want to pay attention to. You want to put them off the side. You want to monitor. You want to see where they're going.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is really hard to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely, really hard to do. And then the not urgent, not important items. It should be an easy conversation to say, but definitely we want to track them and deprioritize them. And these kinds of things, we always talk about the why, right? I think it's super important within an organization. Everybody in the organization should understand the direction of the organization, what that roadmap is, where we're going, and how things fit. And should always be their first question. How does this fit into where we're going? And am I going to divert scarce resources on something that I shouldn't, or am I just reacting? And again, this is where support, which when I found out the number of how much time people spend on support, I kind of wasn't surprised, but I was kind of a little saddened. It's over 50%. Over 50% of the resources on maintenance and support items. And with today's speed of change, that was too high of a number to me. So I'm like, okay, well, let's at least let's shoot for being under 50%, right? And try to keeping our support items under 50%. So that means we're putting 50% of our workforce into where the organization's going. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, especially if you're a software company, then yeah, support. But think about other businesses. If you're an airline, support is literally the operations, people trying to fix their tickets or when there's a delay in a flight and all that other stuff. So we always tend to go back to the IT because that's what we do here. But if you're spending more than half your time just status quo, then it makes it harder to get new things done, obviously. And I would always argue that you should spend time trying to find ways to automate that maintenance. Like in our case, we automate our testing routines. So there's automated tests so a person doesn't have to do it. But at the end of the day, a customer calling in with a problem, it's real hard to say, hey, sorry, that's not urgent and not important. But sometimes you might need to do that.
Well, yeah, and I think it comes down from the top at senior level, because there has to be that trust. I see the noisiest clients are when they don't trust you, right? And you got to build that trust with them and make sure you're delivering on the things that are really important for them and just understand what's important for them. And that's why I said, it's okay to be working on the important and urgent items if there's a clear client impact, right? Those like changing a ticket on the flight because they got bumped. I mean, those are clear client impacts. And so it's just a matter of, well, you made the comment too about, looking at ways to automate. That falls into that potential innovation. So we've said this before too, the studies in past, it said most people only get maybe 5 hours a week on thinking. They're spending 45 or 35 hours a week doing, but only spending 5 hours a week thinking. And that thinking helps you move forward and it helps you have that innovation, because innovation isn't just, one person sitting here saying, oh, I want to have this idea. It comes from everybody, yes. And if somebody has a good idea to help improve things, that's innovation. And then you need to plan for it. You don't need to react and just fix it per se, because you may not fix it right. You might be better served if you put it in the queue and made sure that we followed up on it and we actually looked at it more comprehensively and really fix it in the long run. And that would be part of that innovation conversation.
And if you're not spending the time, right, Diane, it compounds. If you're doing maintenance and support for 50+% of the time, then you can't have the thought or the processes to capture this innovation and move it forward, which, to your earlier point, is like stopping or moving backward, right? With the way that the market paces and the speed at which it moves forward. So.
Yeah, and I want to clarify one thing though. When I say less than 50% of the time, it's really globally for the organization, because you're going to have people that are working on support 90% of the time. And you're going to have people working on product 90% of the time. But overall, we should strive to keep our support activities under that 50% if we can.
And I think ideally you'd want to measure that in dollars if you can.
Good.
Because not always just the resources. You have resources that are higher value to the organization than, let's say, if your customer service is outsourced to maybe a third party even, that costs you the money. But it wouldn't be an aggregation of all your time. It's just their total resource output.
Yeah.
Then
again, I'm not taking into consideration the client, the cost of the client, and frustrated. This is really black and white. It's just, where is your organization spending its time, right?
Yeah, and I don't think, again, I don't think that there's a hard and fast rule, but obviously lowering, if you're able to do the support really well, and maybe it's only costing your company 30% of the resources, and then you can use the other 60 to 70% of your resources on new product development and innovation. That would be really something. And I think there are companies that are like that. Like, I would say SpaceX is probably higher R&D. Now, they're probably getting a little bit of it from the fact that they're helping the government, but there's some companies do have a lot of research and development budget, or if you're a startup and being funded, then you're going to have more R&D research resources.
Right. And yeah, so again, it's not a magic number, but I think the point is that we should know where we're spending our time and money, and then determine as an organization what that right mix might be in order for us to achieve our goals.
Yeah, and you can in a tool like Project Insight, you can actually show the future planned support and maintenance using like a lot of customers will say business as usual with some top-down allocation calculations. So there's ways to actually even show that by having a program or a portfolio for all of your maintenance with the top-down estimates it should be based on the data you've gathered, whether you do the survey method that Diane talked about or whether you're actually tracking your time. You should be able to project that forward, and then that lets you see what resources you have left for all the innovation.
Yeah. So let's get into all that and all that other stuff. So the next pillar is really product development, and this is what most companies see as their roadmap. I see, a roadmap. Its purpose of a roadmap is to communicate your strategy internally as well as externally. I also see it as a way to spark conversation because not everybody's going to agree on where the roadmap should be. And I also don't like to see where one department decides the roadmap, because we need to be putting our roadmap together around where the market's heading and where we want to go as an organization. And everybody needs to have a say in that. How many, I know you guys have a roadmap, Steve, how far out do you typically go?
I would say, well, we end up going out longer than we want because, obviously it takes longer than you hope on things. But I would say we have a very solid 1 year plan of what we're doing in the next year for sure. And then of course it's fuzzier in year 2.
Mm-hmm. No, that's perfect.
Yeah, and then other things that we want to accomplish end up further out, but it's hard we don't actually worry as much about like when is this really happening beyond the first year.
Right. And that's fine because, roadmaps are meant to be that, just kind of a roadmap, and we're allowed to take turns. So we're allowed to, do a jug handle if you're in New Jersey. And you're allowed to, make modifications, but to your point, that next 6 to 12 months should be pretty locked in. Most organizations have a 3 to 5 year window that they look at. Some of the really small organizations, that may just be a year because things are just so volatile is not a positive word per se, but it's what happens. It's like they're trying to get their niche. They're trying to figure out where they want to be. So they're going to do a lot more shifting of where their roadmap is going to be than somebody that's a $20 billion company. And how do you determine what belongs in it and how to decide that, what goes in it? And this is where I'm saying it shouldn't be just one person or one department deciding. It needs to be a collaborative thing. We're going to talk about that second. And then how often should it change? And what's my favorite answer to every project management question? It depends, right?
It depends, yeah.
Right.
Well,
right.
And if you're building something physical that's very expensive, you're probably going to have a longer roadmap than like a software company like we are, where it's virtual and our costs are not actually beyond labor and
right. If you're building a factory, it's probably going to be out a little far.
That's right.
If you're implementing a new process and that there's going to take 3 years to get everybody to adopt that new process, of course it's going to be. So what goes in it needs to be a collaborative effort. And how often should things change? I think that's the part that ties in with the collaboration, because it can't just be, we're going to talk about this January of every year. This needs to be an ongoing conversation about what's going in with the market. What kind of feedback are we getting from our sales team? How are things going with our clients? What's the client saying that, that they're looking for us to solve for next? And so it really is an ongoing exercise with various folks within the organization to keep that roadmap relevant. And these are the things that this part where we're saying, these are the things we should be working on, the non-urgent but important items that have potential target dates, have potential budgets, have some revenue expectations, have some efficiency expectations. And so if we don't deliver on these things, the business plan gets impacted. So the expectation for sales and margin and everything else gets impacted by this part almost as much, if not more, than the support side. But so if things constantly slip or constantly are delayed, a lot of things happen. We said, clients start getting frustrated, right? We're not being as successful as an organization because we're not getting the things done that we said we would get done, that we put into our plan to do. Sales aren't happening because we didn't deliver on something, because this is what we expected to be able to sell once that was available. So make sure that any kind of roadmap conversations, roadmap expectations is happening throughout the year and not just one particular month, and you set it up and it, everything stays, static. So we should be including feedback from end users, from customer success team, from support teams, from marketing, constantly communicating. And I put in here defining the why, because one of the challenges I see the most, especially, I work mostly in technology, right? So the technologists never want to say when something's going to get done. They don't, right? They don't want to commit to that. But we have to in some sense. And if we avoid the transparency because we don't want to explain change, that's a problem. We need to be able to explain the changes. So let's say a big initiative, I'll use an example, like just, one of our vendor partners, was planning on having their APIs available to open accounts ready by the end of this year. Well, that was the plan this year, but maybe about 3 months ago, they're saying, we're working on it. It's still trending to be done soon, but not the end of this year. And they've shifted it out, but everybody's aware of it. So I'm not expecting them to have it done by December. If they get it done in January, I'll be really happy. But right now the target is by the end of March. So it's not an easy conversation to have when your roadmaps change, but it's better than leaving that expectation out there. And then somebody's very disappointed when they say, well, it was supposed to be done in December. It's January now. So where is it? Oh, well, we pushed that out 6 months. I mean, that's just that doesn't go over well. So I really encourage transparency in what we do. I mean, at the very minimum, whatever you're doing this current year, and as far as you would feel comfortable sharing, but it's okay that the roadmap changes. And everybody does realize that. You just need to be able to answer the question, why did it change? What changed in the market that caused you to shift your plan? Maybe there was another project that came up that was more important and that caused this 3-month delay.
Which is part of the core of essential roles of PM 101, right, Diane, is that you need to be able to communicate effectively to the stakeholders involved to say, hey, this is what happened, so that way people aren't knocking on your door on the 15th of December thinking, we're 2 weeks out, right? Or we're 1 week out because of holidays kind of thing.
Well, and think about it this way. Think about on the customer side. What about if they took that plan
right
and allocated resources and are ready to work with you
yep.
in December, and you didn't let them know, and you're now pushing it out 6 months?
I know one bucket that's going to take an uptick in, who needs more effort, and that's maintenance and support at that point as they're addressing all of those customer issues rather than it being communicated clearly.
You're definitely going to, if you miss something like that where people are depending on it and making their own business plans, and especially if you're a software company that has a channel, can really affect them.
I don't understand why it's so hard to have those conversations. I mean, I'm not saying that they're easy, but giving them a reality and the why, and even if it wasn't them that was the cause of the delay, hey, you know what, we did get this huge client and we had issues with it, and it, we had to fix those things, which is ultimately going to provide you value, because we now have this new capability, which is ultimately going to provide you value. It just has delayed our start of this other project. And even though they won't like it, it's the truth. And we can adapt to it. But you're not telling them at the last minute, and they're not asking you, and you have egg on your face because you didn't tell them. So transparency is super, super, super important in my opinion on any of this stuff. That's why we have a tool like Project Insight, because everybody can see it. And so from a product development standpoint, the interesting thing is we probably should be spending more than 50% of our time on the roadmap items. And because there's always going to be some roadmap items in this. And I don't know what the mix would be if I'm more of a service organization versus a technology organization. But if we're trying to keep our support under 50, then obviously your product, your plan development should be over 50.
Yeah, and that would include like any new R&D research, new development too, right?
Maybe. Well, I'll draw the line into planned new development. Yes.
Yeah.
But when we talk about next is innovation, that's a little bit different, because planned new development means that you have a sense, you've decided to go down a path because of either market conditions or feature needs by all of your clients, or you've decided to go down a path for a reason, and you've committed to say that I'm going to do this new development. Innovation is different. Innovation is where something new has arrived and you're not really sure how it's going to impact you as an organization, right? It really truly is. Or it's, is there some way for us to fix this issue, because we're getting, 400 inquiries on it, and, we get pulled, it's taking up 10% of our support time. Maybe there's some innovative activities that can happen to try to find a solution for it. That's where that R&D comes into here. So it's truly disruptive kind of things and true R&D that I would put in innovation, not planned development. Does that make sense, Steve?
Sure.
It's your I'm making the pasta recipe to throw it on the wall to see if it sticks, and then if it does, let's move it forward.
I was just trying to figure out where you were.
Thank you very much, man.
Yeah. I was just trying to figure out where you were. If this 50% is, just under 50% is your support and maintenance, and then the other 50 is product development, then where does the R&D fit into that pie? Right. Is where I was kind of.
Well, that's why I said under and over, and it's not a definitive number yet, right? Yeah. So now we have to think about what do we need to do with an innovation standpoint, and that should be also part of your roadmap. And so a lot of times we think of the roadmap as, here's the things we're planning on doing, that we have the enhancements, the developments, things that we kind of know that our client base needs and wants. I don't think we typically put in roadmaps. Sometimes you do, but I would recommend it. Having at least a line item in there that talks about, and here's some innovative things that we're trying out, right? And it truly is that. It's that spaghetti on the wall. Let's see, because we'll take the AI, first we fear it, then we start dabbling in it and testing it out a little bit, and then we're saying, well, these kind of things are pretty cool. We could probably use it here, and here. And then we really start adapting to it. And even in the AI space right now, I see a lot of people, and I don't want to, like, even my husband's using ChatGPT, which is like, oh my God. So he's trying it, and everybody's accepting the fact or adapting to the fact that, AI's here. But it isn't a big bang. It's been around for 15, 20 years, right, Steve? I mean, it's just in maybe the last 10 years, it's gotten a lot more traction, but there is this whole concept of we're fearing it. We finally test it. We're going to adopt pieces of it. I'm not too sure about everything, and then we'll continue to adapt. So innovation is the things that we're not sure how we're really going to use it, but we should be doing things where we're at least testing things out. If it fails, it fails. This is where, these dollars aren't necessarily tied to the growth of the company. These are R&D dollars that, you're willing to spend to move the organization forward, but you're not sure what's going to come out of it at this point in time. And again, we want to fail fast and we want to learn faster, so, I keep coming back to, there's lots of people to engage with. It's not one person's job to decide on everything. You need to have, input from all of the areas of the organization, sales, support. Remember, we had the grid with support. What are the things that are out there that we've been tracking? We don't really have a firm solution for, but maybe we can get, put some time associated and try to solve for those problems that are the one-offs in that important or not important but urgent kind of category. Maybe that's some things that we can play with and try to figure out. So there's lots of places we can get data to do this innovation. There should be a problem that we're trying to solve, probably. It doesn't have to be really specific, but you really should have something that you're trying to solve for, versus just playing with the tool. There is some level of play to find out what it can do, but you're not going to solve some other company's problem. It's really about solving your own problems. And then to jointly determine when things get put on the roadmap as a product development item, right? So, and why should things change? Maybe all of a sudden you have this big aha moment and you're saying, oh my God, this is the best thing. We've tested it out with our clients. They think this is great. And they're willing to have that bump a couple other things in our year 2 and year 3 roadmap to get this in place, because this seems to be a much better opportunity for the organization and for your clients. So this all has to be part of that ongoing conversation.
How do you determine, if, let's say, we've identified a bunch of opportunities, what's a good strategy for determining what goes on the roadmap? Do you have like some advice there?
Sure. Let's just you have data in the organization. So the first place I would look is, does the innovation we're finding solve a problem that we are aware of that we haven't yet solved for? Mm-hmm. Right? So maybe there is a bucket of support activity that you're just dealing it, fixing it on the fly, doing a workaround, but there's enough out there that, this might be able to solve that. And then there's value to that, right? So you want to pick things that have value and value to your organization bottom line, right? That's what we're talking about, is how do we grow our business? If we're picking things that have no value, or the clients don't see it as value, it's either we're going to save some money or somebody's going to buy it. Right. Yeah. So that's the only way a company grows, so that's the best way to determine what might be put on the roadmap, the development roadmap, but then you can prioritize if you have some of that more objective data to go along with it.
So like scoring them somehow and then weighing them. Okay.
Yeah. 20% of our clients have seen this error. All right, well, maybe we can, 30% of our clients have been asking for something like this. Maybe we can solve for it now, which we haven't been able to solve for it in the past.
Yeah, I think it's always hard to weigh things where, if you do this roadmap feature, then your sales can go up by X dollars because there's market ready to have that, versus we're going to save money on the flip side because customers won't be calling customer service as much over a certain issue. Mm-hmm. So you've got things like that, which are just savings, and then you have things that are going to increase revenue, and you probably need a good, healthy mix of those items, not just always only doing the new features, because then you're going to blow up your support.
Right. Or maybe it's a way to, streamline all the testing, I can't say exactly what, but it's really it's either something that we know that our clients have been asking for that they're willing to pay for, and your sales team and your customer success team should be able to help you quantify that. Or it's something that we know we're spending hours on that we can potentially eliminate. Yep. Or maybe it's a new product, that we can possibly offer. But there has to be some metrics around the potential market, and that's where your marketing team can come into play.
It's that balance. I think you're right, though, Steve, that it can't just be always the pluses, right, to the revenue side, because that can result in a lot more minuses down the road as far as the support and other pieces that you need to do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, Steve, ideally you keep your product development efforts level at like a 50%. And when you have organizations that, don't need to go as fast with innovation, you want to dip into that support side. Again, this is why it's important to make sure you're working on the support side and being able to put things into those bottom two quadrants, because that's where you can find some time. Or if you really need to do more innovation, again, it's still like we really should be putting, our 50% of our effort into our plan, and the other 50% into the future or the support and maintenance. And again, every company is going to be different, and you've got to evaluate where you think you need to be based on competition and based on a lot of things. But when I think companies are at risk when they start seeing their planned work dip below 50%, and that's a symptom and a trigger, I would say, to really dig deep and find out.
Yeah.
So, Matt, you want to show us some of other fun stuff in Project Insight?
Yeah, I think that piece you were just showing is a really nice spot to be able to identify, right, what we're working on. So again, I'm on my portfolio view here where I can see the programs that make this up. We've clicked on a few of the other views. We've gone to the Gantt. We went to the task list. The project boards are also really great here, where you can say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what's active. This is what we're focusing on from a high level project perspective. That can also, to the point of doing that long-term planning and priority, help you even prioritize what each of these buckets of work are going to be doing. The screen, though, that you were just showing, Diane, kind of this idea of my pie chart and what are we working on. The nice advantage of using a tool like ours is it's all out of the box, right? I don't need to lasso in this report or ask for this. It's all right here based on what we're actually planning and executing on. And this is kind of the idea of what you were just showing, right? I can show my roadmap items. I can show what we're doing from an innovation perspective. Our maintenance and support is less than 50. Let's give each other a high five, right? We're doing it as far as that's concerned. Now, the nice thing about something like this is via the filters within our tool, I can choose what sort of date ranges I want to see. So as we're planning ahead, I can say, hey, during this quarter, so we're not checking in on a yearly basis, or during next year, or let's look at 2027 because we're doing some kind of longer term planning. I can choose what date ranges I want these data points to be in, and then I can understand what we're going to plan during that sliver of time versus this. That is great because then you can show trends, you can save these reports where you can readily have them available in your menu. I can make them so Steve has access to them automatically just by logging right in. And thinking of that trend line, I can even schedule these to be sent out automatically. So if I want this to go out as an Excel file once a quarter, now I don't need one less step for somebody to take to understand where we're at. I can baseline it right off of those emails that Project Insight's sending us automatically. The other advantage of a tool like ours, if you are using that methodology that we kind of discussed on, I'm a contributing member, I'm marking my items as complete, whether I'm logging time or not, as long as pieces are getting marked as complete, we can show you your planned values and what you're actually doing, right? So that's the idea that we can do both within one, right within Project Insight, which says, we plan to do the right batch of roadmap. However, we are spending a lot more time on maintenance and support than we had wanted to do. So
yeah, and it makes all that difference in the world if you don't have to be, calculating the stuff every single day, which people won't do.
Right.
You've got something that shows you how you're tracking to that plan, and you can respond to it much quicker. If you at least get a sense, an inkling that it's happening.
Exactly. You don't have to wait until the end of the end of year to start grooming for the next year. If you're doing this on a quarterly basis or even monthly, we internally we use our own tool, believe it or not, but we have these sorts of meetings at least once a month where we're checking in on what did we say we were going to do, how are we progressing toward that to make sure that we stay in aligned, and this is just a really easy way to do so.
Yeah,
so
it's awesome.
makes it a lot easier to again get that course correction And then this works just like any of the other reporting where I can change it to specific date ranges and have it saved that way if I want. Sample data here, so we're just looking at everything at once. So
Right. No, that's awesome. Yeah, and again, the challenge is getting everything into that portfolio, right?
Yeah, you
Because
have to tag the data and
well,
make
some
sure.
organizations don't put their support projects there. Some
Right.
organizations don't put their, innovation stuff there. They're just doing their regular development, their regular
Right.
project work, and so they're only seeing a piece of what the organization is spending its time on.
Yeah.
So again, having a portfolio of your enterprise is phenomenal from a management perspective, from being able to control and monitor the growth of your organization. Because there really is the support. You need the support. It's keeps the lights on, keeps clients happy, right? We also need the product development. We need to make sure we're delivering on the things we expected to deliver on, because those are the things our clients were expecting. But we also need that innovation. I mean, we're at a age now where, what's the next thing, right? And how do we respond to it? And how do we take advantage of it without sabotaging the plan, right?
Mhm.
So that means you have to monitor it, and you have to see where you're spending your time. You have to see whether or not there's value in it, and constantly be open and transparent with why things are changing. Otherwise, you're kind of working on a big old black hole. So having a tool like Project Insights significantly improves that effort.
One of the pieces I'll piggyback on that real quick is what Steve had mentioned, and we've done previous tutorials where we have talked about this, but I don't have to get into the weeds as far as what tasks each of those support items are. I can do that top level planning, as Steve had mentioned, and say, hey, this team is going to be on this to 80% of the time or 90% of the time, and still get these outputs without being too difficult to maintain or
Yeah, I
anything
mean,
else. So
you could
yeah,
track it at the project. Like I think in your demo there, you showed tasks being tagged as the types, but
right.
that could be done at the project level to say this is a support project and this is an
Mm-hmm.
innovation project. So you can tag it really deep by categorizing all the tasks that way, or you could just categorize the projects.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
Awesome.
which is easier to do the projects.
Ease into it. Well, we have hit the end of our hour here, guys.
Yeah,
Time
those are.
flies, right?
Yeah, it really was. Grab your phone, get the QR code scanned right now. Again, the piece will be sent out before the week is done. We appreciate everybody being here. This was for your PDU. This recording will be here. If you want to grab any little bit, you can later on, just via the same link that we're on currently. We do look forward to attending the Global Summit, PMI Global Summit. That's going to be in Phoenix. That's my personal backyard, so we're excited to see everybody there. If you are attending, please stop by and see the Project Insight crew. It sounds like Diane's going to be joining us as well, which will be wonderful. We'll be more than just these little images there. And then we will be taking the month of November off from our PDU, back to close out the year on the 10th of December with kind of a trust but verify, right, Diane, as far as that's concerned? So we hope to have you there with us. And then the Project Insight, Where Your Cape to Work podcast, season 2 is wrapping. If you are behind on any episodes, please do stream on the platform of choice. Had some really wonderful conversations with different leaders from many different organizations as we go. And we had a really great conversation with Steve actually recently as well. So please do listen on your platform of choice.
Sounds good.
And
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, and last one's just socials. So please, if you're not following us on LinkedIn, join, or if you prefer Instagram or Facebook, that's there. And then our YouTube is full of wonderful resources, both from a customer perspective and accessing how do I do these pieces, or even from these past PDUs that we've done where I need some project management 101. It's all accessible there. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yep, and hope to see people next month in Arizona.